Hello, my name is Stephen Francis. I'm an Executive Director in EY's Financial Services Law Practice, and I'm going to talk about Brexit and passporting issues. In summary, what I'm going to discuss is the implications of Brexit for banks, asset managers and insurance companies, despite the fact that it's all still very uncertain about what form Brexit is going to take. I'm going to talk about how firms can make sure that they have their assets and their people and their operations in the right places to take advantage of what might happen in the future. And finally, think about whether it is possible that the UK will become a low regulated environment or whether UK laws will exist much as they do now. So the City of London has been against Brexit for two main reasons. The first reason, which is the reason that most people talk about, is loss of passporting rights. And it's worth spending a few moments just outlining what that is, I think. So most financial services activities undertaken in the UK are covered by these European single market directives. And what that effectively means is if you're authorised in one country to do, say, banking or asset management or insurance, you can get authorised in all of the other countries within Europe. Automatically, you don't need to seek authorization from those countries. It's a simple notification procedure. So being authorized in one member state gives you access to all of the other 500 million potential customers who are in all of the other member states. And so we have UK institutions which passport into the other countries, and we have European institutions who passport into the UK. What will effectively happen after Brexit is all of that passporting will stop, which means that many organisations may find that they've got their businesses and their people in the wrong place, and they need to put in place relocation plans, move their people around to make sure that they can do business. So I think loss of passporting rights has definitely been the main reason why the City of London was almost universally against Brexit. There is another reason though, and I think the other reason is more emotional, which is that the City of London has made its money and become the leading financial centre in the world by being open and pretty agnostic about how it helps people make money and how it, matches those who have excess capital with those who need it. Hasn't taken a particularly moralistic view over what people's business plans are, and has been open to all countries, all types of citizens. Many people in the City of London are from different countries and work there. And I think the emotional thing is, for many people, Brexit just seemed a bit parochial, a bit narrow-minded, and not the kind of impression that the city wants to give of being open to business for everyone. So I think passporting was the main ostensible reason. It's certainly the main legal change that will happen. But I think there were more emotional reasons why the City of London didn't want to look as if it was opposed to other people working within it or it being engaged with other parts of Europe. I would say that banks and asset management firms probably feel they have the most to lose from Brexit, because they're probably the institutions that have made the most use of their passporting rights. Life insurance companies probably feel relatively relaxed because quite a few life insurance companies in Europe are set up as separately capitalised businesses. So they don't use the passport in the same way that banks and asset managers do. Lloyds will be very affected. I think a large number of Lloyds insurers do use their passporting rights. So the position is quite mixed. But my sense is that, generally speaking, everyone is going to be significantly affected. And I would expect asset managers and banks to feel under the most pressure to get their business plans right in the future and work out what they're going to do about Brexit. So I think the city's hope with regard to how this process happens is really that there's not what they call a hard Brexit. And so in order to understand a hard Brexit, we need to appreciate fundamentally why the British people voted as they did. And the main reason for that is probably a dislike of immigration. So a hard Brexit is where the UK loses its passporting rights, exits the customs union, and has very little formal relationship with Europe, which is what some people think must happen if the UK restricts free movement of people and puts significant barriers on immigration. So what the city would most like is to retain those passporting rights somehow. And there are various means through which that can happen. People talk about the Norway model, where passporting rights are retained, but the UK would have very little influence over how EU laws develop. And there are other types of methodology that can be adopted for giving the UK access to the European market and giving European businesses access to the UK. But there's a sense in which the UK will only be allowed those accommodations if it is relaxed about immigration, and we all don't think that that's going to happen. So I think what the city really hopes is that there is a long lead in time, that they have a significant period of time to prepare for what's going to happen. They have enough time to make applications in different countries for authorisations, to move people, to set up new entities. What the city really wouldn't like is to be surprised and to be bounced into a decision very quickly. Well, firms have to think about what they should do in this situation. And, there are dilemmas. Do firms wait and see what the final outcome is going to be, or do they take steps now? And in some sectors away from financial services, which are less obviously affected by Brexit, many firms are waiting and seeing. I think in the financial services sector, that's just not possible. Firms have to take stances now. But these positions are quite complicated because at the end of the day, financial services companies are about people. And although you may decide, okay, let's set up a regulated entity in, say, Ireland or Luxembourg, and we'll use that as the European base from which we passport, because the passport's no longer available from the UK, that may mean that you need to move people to Luxembourg or Ireland, and your people may not want to move. So it's really a combination, I think, of three things that firms are doing now and thinking about. One is, where do we have to have locations? What types of locations do they need to be? Do they need to be branches? Do they need to be fully regulated and capitalised institutions which are authorised in their own right? Where do we want our footprint to be? They have to think about where their people are going to be located. Some firms are thinking, is it possible to set up an entity in one particular country and outsource everything back to the UK? So while legal structure changes, everything carries on as usual with the UK doing everything. That's going to be possible in some countries, but not possible for others. And tax is also an issue. Entities will want to be set up in the most advantageous tax country as well. And when you put those three things together, country location and authorisations and regulated environments that you work in, people and tax, it's actually quite a complicated matrix to get right. And so firms are planning for it now, even though they don't know what's going to happen. And some firms know that their plans will mean that they set up redundant institutions that they don't actually need. So they may set up in a country and find later that they don't need it, let's say, because the UK has preserved passporting rights. But I think my general message is that it's important to do things now. Even if the UK were to trigger, the much discussed Article 50 in early 2017, and so we were to Brexit in 2019, that's a 2-year period. Now, 2 years is not a long time to get new firms authorised, get regulators happy with them, to set them up, to move people and assets to the right jurisdiction. So although 2 years sounds, 2 years, anyone can do anything in 2 years, right? But that isn't the case here. Firms really should start planning and working out what they're going to do now. So we're already seeing clients of ours set up new institutions, think about where they need to do things, and some old legal mechanisms, which frankly haven't been used much, like Societas Europa, which are European companies which one can actually pick up and re-domicile and put in another country. All of a sudden, these things have become attractive and interesting, whereas before they weren't really viewed as very significant. So I would say definitely in the financial services space, despite the fact that there's still a huge amount of uncertainty about what will happen, firms are having to make their best guesses and make plans accordingly. So some people think one of the upsides to Brexit may be that the UK will no longer be bound by what some think are as these very onerous European laws. And the UK may be able to go it alone and perhaps become a low regulated environment, which encourages people to the UK because they're not subject to the same kinds of very heavyweight regulation that comes out of the EU. I mean, some of these regulations like MiFID II, the Insurance Mediation Directive, Payment Services Directive, e-money directive, the regulation that applies to banks, CRD4. The theory is that if the UK no longer has to comply with these laws, could the UK become a more relaxed place to do business in, and could businesses move here for that reason? Now, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that isn't going to happen. I think the reality is that if the UK wants to have any form of viable relationship with Europe, it has to become what's called an equivalent regime. And so there is an allowance given for third countries, which is what the UK will become if when it leaves, just like the US is a third country vis-a-vis Europe. There is a regime where third countries which are equivalent are given a certain status under these European single market directives. You can, for example, under AIFMD, potentially market to professional investors or eligible counterparties, not to retail customers, but to customers who can look after themselves if you're in a equivalent third country state. So my sense is that the UK is going to have to maintain equivalence, and that will mean that UK financial services laws will be almost identical to European financial services laws. There are some things which the UK doesn't like. It doesn't like certain aspects of Solvency II, which is the heavyweight regulation which now applies to insurance businesses, and it may do something about bankers' bonuses, caps and things of that nature, which is another part of the regulation where it believes Europe went too far. But on the whole, my sense is that UK regulation will in the future look very much like it does now. And so I don't think there is any chance at all of the UK becoming a low regulated country. And in fact, that's, if you think about it, that's as it should be. What the UK wouldn't want to be is regarded as some kind of offshore type of environment where nefarious companies not up to good can go and, secretly do their work there. I expect the UK will become an equivalent regime to the rest of Europe.